Welcome to the RAS Project, episode 92, a conversation about life, entrepreneurship, personal development, family, tech, and marketing. My name is Ivan Temelkov, and I'm your host. And this morning, I am joined by my amazing sidekick, the amazing Courtenay Turner. And on this podcast, you will gather 100% real, raw, and unfiltered, life-changing advice to help you level up in every aspect of your life and business and help you reach your goals and dreams. Good morning, Courtenay. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, it's Monday and it's going to be a turbulent week from what I hear.
Yeah, I'm hearing that too. I've already seen businesses starting to board up and prepare. So
Right.
I've seen that here, and I've seen video of it all over the country and other cities. So yeah,
I know. It's pretty crazy, right? Of what's happening. And before we jump into that, for those of you that are joining us for the first time, we are multicasting everywhere, all over the web. We are on Facebook, on YouTube, on Periscope. Let's see, what did I miss? On LinkedIn Live and on Twitch also. And you know, this topic is a little bit out of left field for the podcast, but I wanted to talk about it today because there's so much, and that is agreeing to disagree. Where is America headed? You know, where's America headed? I think there is so much uncertainty and chaos. Like you said, businesses are boarding up, you know, all over the country, which is scary. Reminds me of, you know, 4 or 5 months ago, pre-COVID, or when COVID was starting, that the fear that I had immersed in the country. And now we're seeing that repetitive behavior happen. What's your take on this? What are you seeing on your side?
I'm seeing some businesses start to board up again, and I am hearing people say things like, "I'm stocking up on toilet paper again." I am hearing a lot of people who are very nervous, and some people are saying they're going to head out of town, go to some place that's a little bit more rural, to protect themselves and their family. I know people can't buy, ammunition and weapons, and a lot of people are trying right now. So there's definitely rumor that there might be some unrest. Yeah. I don't know. On the other side, there's also lots of enthusiasm and support. I was at the Beverly Hills Trump rally this weekend, and it was pretty incredible to see. You wouldn't think in Beverly Hills, California, of all places, that there would be such massive numbers.
Sure.
Yeah. And one of the things that, I keep talking about with my big takeaway, that it's no secret where I stand, but I think that it's really amazing just to see the dichotomy of the two sides. There were some insurrectionists who were present, and the way that the Trump rally supporters shut them down was to go around and surround them cheering USA, USA.
Yeah.
And I just thought, this is it. This is the dichotomy, and this is the depiction of both sides. Because one was trying to start a fight, and they were getting very hostile and trying to start a fight. And then the rally people basically just like shut them down with American pride, chanting USA, USA.
Right.
The greatest thing ever. I'm like, that's the way you shut down a fight, is with pride and love, and just kill them with kindness. It was awesome.
And you know, when you said that, and I'll come back to that for a second, but one thing that I wanted to mention here for listeners, new listeners also, is that Courtenay is actually a political pundit. And in fact, her podcast, the Courtenay Turner podcast, will be going live this month. You guys definitely want to subscribe to this, because let's just say that this is going to rattle the cages. And one thing that I absolutely love about Courtenay is this, that you're so direct, you're so transparent, but you also come from a place of love and agreeing to disagree. Because I think that, let's face it, America is about unity and peace and love.
You know, it's and United States of America. E pluribus unum. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think with what's happening right now, you know, tomorrow, election day, you know, everybody, you know, is talking about uncertainty. I think I even heard some people on Facebook that they're considering moving to another country. I'm like, really? Where did your sense of patriotism go? You know, like you're patriotic until, you know, you're democratic until things don't go your way. And then it's like so much for being united, right? And so that was one of the things. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I want to say something about that because what I really see and hear with a lot of people who are saying, you know, they're going to move is they're really just throwing a tantrum like a child who didn't get their cookie. And if you truly do not like what's happening in America, you do not like the values that we stand for, you don't agree with the fundamental core of what America is, then I think you should leave. And I wish you would stop threatening to leave. You should do it. You should really leave. Because I hear this from the celebrities, like, you know, I hear from lots of people, but we're really seeing it from these elitist celebrities who are threatening, you know, Trump wins, I'm going to move. And really what they're doing is throwing a tantrum. And it's not that I don't think you should, you know, be patriotic and, you know, fight. And, you know, certainly I was not happy with many elections and I stayed because I love this country and I love for what it stands, regardless of, you know, whether things go my way or don't. But I really do feel very strongly that there are people who don't feel that way and they don't love this country. They don't value, you know, the founding principles. And if that's true, then, you know, rather than throwing tantrums, you should live by your word. And if you don't like it, leave.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, what you said about there is just, I think that's the beauty about this free world, you know, this free country is just that, you know, the freedom of expression, and we're all allowed to express ourselves, and whether it's our political beliefs or our morals or our values. And the reality of things is, I think a lot of people try to oppose that. And that's where, like, you kind of see a little bit of tyranny and dictatorship coming about, because honestly, you know, I will say this is that regardless of who wins, honestly, the next presidency, is that I wholeheartedly believe deep in my heart that this country will not crumble, because it is fueled and powered by the people, for the people. And I think that's what the left and the right are forgetting, because this is in part why I've been neutral for so long, is because I think the left and right, in part, largely, it's about political gain, or at least a lot of people see it that way. You know, the American people see it as nothing more than just political gain, right? Is this that they are trying to build their career, you know, establish themselves as the next leader of a country. But are they truly willing to help the people? You know, are they really truly using to help the people? And that's one of the dilemmas right now. And I think that's creating a sense of fear, Courtney, for people, is just that uncertainty, because they don't truly know whether Trump or Biden, whoever wins, like, are they really going to solve the problems in our country? But let's face it, either candidate that wins, right, at the end of the day, if you have problems in your own life, you're the person that needs to fix them, and your president is not going to fix them.
Absolutely. So I have a couple of things I'd like to say.
Sure.
You addressed a couple of things that, you know, I think are really relevant and important. So the first thing is when you brought up political gain, and are people, you know, are the candidates really there serving the people? And is that something that the American people are worried about? And that's what's bringing this rise of so much fear. I honestly think that this is actually why Trump won in 2016. He is anti-establishment. And, you know, he's been very clear and candid about this. He's talked, I think he just did an interview yesterday actually talking about why he ran in 2016. And so much of it is because he couldn't stand what he was seeing in Washington, D.C. with the elite political class and how they weren't serving the people. And I think that is why he won, because whether you like him, you dislike him, he is not a politician. And he did not run for political gain. If anything, he has actually lost quite a bit, you know, serving this country. He's lost money. He has risked his life. I wrote an article recently and I talked a lot about this, how he is truly anti-establishment. But the second thing I want to address, and there's a lot we can discuss in that, obviously, but the second thing I want to address is really important. I think people are looking to political answers to solve spiritual problems. And the spiritual problems lie within. One of the things when you study human nature and you study humanity, one of the things I think is so fascinating is that a lot of people we touched on this a little bit, I think, on Friday, but people typically look externally to solve problems. They really don't know themselves very well. But one of the things when you really study humanity, you start to realize, and it's terrifying, but it's also empowering when you truly understand this, is that evil is not out there. Evil is within each of us. And the job of every human being is to surmount that evil. It's not to eradicate it. We will always have evil forces within us. But when you understand how to control that, to tame it, to recognize it, and where you want it to serve, because there are times that those dark forces can be used for good. And there are times where you need to rein it in and have power over yourself. And when we as individuals start to really recognize that and take control of that, there will be less evil out there because we're taming ourselves and we're, rising to our spiritual awareness and evolving.
So one thing that you mentioned that, speaking of Donald Trump specifically, is the one thing that I really like he has done is he has really boosted the potential behind entrepreneurship. And, we have seen that throughout COVID, and I don't know if I would directly attribute to that, but I think obviously he had some attribution to that, given that he was still in presidency, right? Sort of the fearless leader, captain of the ship. And that is, I think, obviously that small business is the backbone of America. I mean, without small business, there's little and no economy. Like, job growth has to continuously happen. New businesses have to start. And this is something I'm very adamant about. So, in fact, me and my father had a convo about this. And, typically we, as an immigrant family, we've been more towards the left. But then, when we saw what Trump did, from a business standpoint, it was like, this is amazing because, it's providing for families, new jobs were being created. And, in fact, I saw a post of someone on Facebook about 3 or 4 days ago. And this was an old friend that I hadn't really engaged with in a long time. And she was asking me, she's like, so how has COVID, impacted your business? And I said, well, I doubled my business. Revenue has doubled and things are going good. And, she said, well, I had to cut back and, I had to make some sacrifices. And it goes back to what you just said. I think people really are looking towards politics to solve their religious beliefs or moral beliefs. And when they get disappointed, it's like, well, this is not the candidate I wanted to win. So it's like, screw you, man. It's like, I just don't see the rationale behind that. I mean, you made a very valid point that, politics is not going to solve your personal problems. That's what people don't understand is just that they're personal problems for a reason. Hence the word personal, because it's you, your relationship.
Everywhere you go, there you are.
Exactly. Everywhere you go, there you are. And the word personal and personal problems kind of should be, the defining thing that, if your relationship is not going the way you hoped, well, that's your personal. It's not the fault of Donald Trump or Joe Biden. It's your fault. Fix it. And I think there's a lot of that in America. And so I want to kind of churn the discussion towards agreeing to disagree. Because that's literally what's happening right now is like people are just, and I posted this on Facebook and it was actually kind of ironic because I was hoping to get a bunch of people to jump in on the convo, but I think it was maybe too heartfelt. And that is that, okay, here's what's happening in America right now. Hey, who you voting for? Joe Biden. Hey, who you voting for? Trump. Okay, screw you, man. That's like literally like, why can't we agree to disagree in these United States of America?
So I really want to address this because this is something that is so fundamental to the values of this country. The First Amendment is freedom of speech. And there's a reason the First Amendment is freedom of speech, because without freedom of speech, you really don't have anything else. And when you say, why can't we agree to disagree? I think we absolutely have to agree to disagree, because no one person, no matter how brilliant, how informed, they are never going to be right about everything. Or even if in a perfect world they were, like if they were somehow magical and they were right about everything, they still can't know everything. There's still things they're going to miss. So absolutely, I think we need to be able to have discussions. There's a reason the right and the left sit next to each other.
Right.
In every political structure that has such a dichotomy, and it is so that they can communicate with each other. However, I really do want to address this, and this may be a little provocative, but I'm going to say it. I think what we are seeing is there's a big difference between, traditional liberals who are left of center and what we're seeing today with the radical left. That's not to say that the far right has no issues. I don't support extremism on either side. However, what we're seeing from the radical left is this pervasive censorship, and they're shutting down freedom of speech. They're telling you what you can and can't say. It is so Orwellian, or Huxley's Brave New World. It is things that writers of decades ago talked about and wrote about that were dystopian. We never thought we'd see come to fruition today. We're seeing it. We are seeing this kind of censorship where you're not allowed to say what you believe, or you will be canceled, shut down, taken down, fired, in some cases shot. I mean, there was literal cases of people saying a few months ago, all lives matter, which I think fundamentally nobody should disagree with. I mean, who disagree with all lives matter? All lives do matter, I believe. And I have a really hard time wrestling with how somebody could disagree with that statement. But there are people who were shot for saying it. That is not freedom of speech. And we are seeing that from, some of the people who are on the very far left, who really, they want to shut down people's ability to speak their mind. And that's terrifying, because that is everything that we fought for in this country.
Yeah. One thing I actually wanted to share a story in regards to that, in terms of censorship and, silencing freedom of speech, like you mentioned, because I wholeheartedly believe that, and yes, the United States of America has fought for that. I feel like the last 250 plus years have literally been spent largely on that. Here's something interesting that happened on Facebook that really got me thinking, and I'm surprised that I didn't lose my shit on this, because I traditionally would. Because so the post was about how the Michigan Health Department issued these recommendations around social gatherings, and like recommendations, mind you, there's the key word here, right? Recommendations. It wasn't an enforcement, it wasn't a law, it was guidelines, right? And then the person that posted this was basically saying, oh my God, this is totalitarianship, communism. And I'm like, wait, dude, I lived through communism for 9 years of my life. Like, communism is like, you can't do something or they come and arrest you because it's prohibited by the law. This is a guideline. This is a recommendation. Like, it's not an enforcement.
It is, but this is the problem here, is that people are trying to enforce these recommendations, and that is communism. That is totalitarianism. That is not constitutional, and that's the problem. I have had so many instances of this. I was slapped a federal warning on American Airlines for trying to drink a cup of water. So and the federal warning is a written federal warning. I now call them Anti-American Air. They have no regard for the Americans with Disabilities Act. They say that it doesn't apply to them, which is not true. It does apply to them. They say that it doesn't apply to the airline nor the airport, which again is not true. And moreover, they're trying to police you. Literally, I was literally here with a cup of water, and they were telling me I didn't have my mask on. Do they have superpowers that enable them to be able to drink through their mask? Because I don't. So I agree. It's in technicality, It is just a recommendation. It's a mandate. However, if they are trying to enforce it as if it's a law, which is not constitutional, that is tyrannical, that is communism. And moreover, what I'm seeing that is even more terrifying is, most people don't know Hitler was actually elected. And what I'm seeing from this type of mass compliance as if it were a law, it means that people aren't thinking for themselves. It means that people aren't taking their own personal health, thoughts, freedoms, rights, and considering what is best for them and their family into consideration. And they're just blindly capitulating as if these things were laws. And that's wherein the problem lies.
Well, and I think you said it, and basically to round out the story, that was kind of what I was pointing out. And I said, look, I'm not blind. I'm seeing, look, for the first 9 years of my life, when we lived in Bulgaria, you couldn't celebrate the holidays. Literally, people would come to your house and monitor and see if you had a Christmas tree up or any kind of decorations. And if you did, they would take you to jail. And so what I was trying to say in that post, look, it's a recommendation, it's a guideline. I understand they're trying to enforce it, but it is not a law. Right. And I'm not the person. So what was actually really funny about the comments I put is, I'm pretty sure that most people think that I'm a communist based on that post, because what I was trying to illustrate is like, get your head out of your ass and understand that I'm on the same page as you. Because if they enforce it and then make it a law, I'll be the first to oppose it, because that is counterintuitive as to why I live in the United States of America. Right. That's what they don't understand. But immediately, and these were mostly people from the right, mind you, that were like, this is the kind of stuff that Hitler and the Nazis did. I'm like, dude, pipe down. I'm on the same page with you. I'm just not as extreme as you, to where I'm looking at a guideline or a recommendation. I'm like, well, I don't do this. I definitely don't do that. In fact, we're considering about having a Friendsgiving. And this is, mind you, in the state of Michigan, not in the state of Missouri where I live. This is in the state of Michigan, that this is happening. But people are so bent over the fact and making assumptions already. And I'm like, unless something happens, like if this gets put into law, you don't think that it's going to be opposed by the entire country? Of course it will. And I'll be one of those people to oppose it. But people, go ahead.
The problem, though, is that they start with small little increments. And we've seen this throughout the past 100 years where they've marched through. So, Stalin had his 5 pillars. I don't know how familiar you are with the 5 pillars. I would imagine coming from a communist country, you probably are. But for the audience, I will go through them. In order to have a functioning society, you need the backbone of the family, the backbone of religion. And that, by the way, does not mean organized, it means like the moral underpinnings of religion, religious institutions. It is the media, it's entertainment, and it is academia. And we've seen through the past 100 years where they have, it feels like it's been a very slow kind of infiltration through the culture to destroy these 5 pillars. And it's because destroying these 5 pillars is how you can have a revolution. And when I say revolution, I'm not talking about reform. I'm not talking about changes. Of course, as societies evolve, you make reformations, you change things. However, you don't radically, overthrow. And with every kind of a, revolution, there is violence. That is what it is. It is a violent overthrowing.
Right.
And, that is not what's needed in order to reform. But that radically destroys. It is about destroying. It's not about changing or evolving. And in order to do that, you have to tear down the culture. You have to tear down the moral underpinnings of the society. And so to go back to what you're saying, and you're saying, that it's a nuanced thing and that you're going to be the first to argue to vote against it and you're not going to stand for it. The problem is when you slowly chip away at something, people start to get accustomed to having more of their freedoms taken away, and they start to say, okay, yeah, we can move. I use the analogy of a game of tug of war, so you're playing tug of war, right? And typically like somebody's pulling and it's like, okay, we're just an inch, it's fine, we'll get it back. And then they pull another inch, like, okay, well, we're gonna keep pulling, you will hold our ground. And they keep holding the ground instead of fighting back and pushing back. And before you know it, you're miles down the road and you're like, how did we get here? So to me, that's the problem.
No, that's a really good point, Courtney. And, of course, the perspective is the differentiating factor. And, I'm one of those people that, what I have found in my life is that if I make speculations on things that aren't factual and make assumptions, then that's where you get a lot of stress and anxiety, but
of course,
and depression. And
Absolutely.
So what you said is I wholeheartedly agree. It's not that I don't disagree with that. And I think social media is notorious for diluting the contextual value and true intentions behind people to where so many people become presumptuous. And that was literally, in fact, one of my clients and a friend actually jumped in and literally wrote like a blog post comment that took me like 5 minutes to answer. And she's like, I think, Ivan, you're on the same page with everybody, but you're just looking at it from a different angle. And I'm like, of course I am. I'm looking at it from a different angle, but please understand that, of course, I would oppose dictatorship. Of course, I would oppose tyranny. It's not that I'm for it. It's not that I'm supporting it. Right. It's just I'm one of those people that's like, and you made a very valid point that if you chip away at something, people start to believe it. And eventually it turns into dictatorship. And that's where I think the fine line between, agreeing to disagree and understanding that we all have different perspectives. But at the end of the day, we're all in this together. We're united. We live in the United States of America. And as opposed to spending time on these conversations that turn into bickering contests, is that let's just take a more democratic approach and say, okay, I get it. You've got your own perspective, but I believe we're on the same page. And people just can't be diplomatic, I think, is what's happening right now. People just can't be that diplomatic because, and maybe that's what fuels social media. A few episodes ago, I talked about my perspective on the Social Dilemma movie. And, and that really kind of alludes to what we're talking about today, because I think social platforms like Facebook and obviously YouTube is with outrage and video, and Twitter, of course, is voicing, left and right opinion on where things are at, the current state of the country. But at the end of the day, we have to find it within ourselves as human beings to realize that, we have to unite. And not create division by opposing each other and giving each other the benefit of the doubt. And I will tell you this, I'm part of an organization that will remain nameless, that's supposed to be a group of elite entrepreneurs. When I think the vast majority of them are actually, far right, which is fine, but I think that I get judged day in, day out because of my beliefs. I get judged. And it's kind of frustrating because it goes to what we're talking about now, is just that agree to disagree. And if we don't learn to agree to disagree, then where is America headed?
Right. Absolutely. I think that is a really, really good question. I think that's very interesting. Have you that you feel that you're being judged, or have you had conversations with them, or that's just a feeling that you're getting?
So I've had actually a couple of instances. One particular individual who flat out said that he did not want to have anything in association with me, did not want to work with me, did not want to be friends with me. And this was largely because I had hinted, because I've always been more on the left side. I've always been more democratic. And in this particular election, believe it or not, I'm neutral because I honestly see pros and cons on both sides, So it's like, why would I vote for, the lesser evil? Like it just, but that's just me. And so one particular encounter was really, and it actually bothered me for like probably a month, honestly, because it reminded me when I was in high school and being bullied for 4 years all through high school because I was different. And then I realized that, what? This person does not even belong in my life because they cannot respect, my decisions, my morals, my beliefs, when in fact, isn't that what this country was established on?
Absolutely.
Wasn't it, established on freedom of speech?
Absolutely.
And the ability to express yourself, stand up for what you believe in. But then I realized you're always going to have someone that's going to oppose your views, you
Sure.
know. And I just realized that, you know, it's okay to move on. But I've had those kinds of instances, to answer your question, and it's been kind of frustrating because it has made me question myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when in fact, because me and you are both on the opposite sides of the aisle, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
beauty about this that I don't think
Yeah.
a lot of people are realizing. And I wanted to mention it on the show here
Yeah.
because being on both sides actually creates some sense of diversity that I think the United States of America needs.
I absolutely agree. So I want to address a couple of things that you said. Fundamentally, I absolutely agree. People need to be able to have their voice. They should not be shut down for having their voice. And people need to be able to hear each other and communicate. And you know that's first and foremost. But secondly, when you're talking about, I lost my train of thought. But I was going to say something about when you were saying that we need to be able to agree to disagree. I absolutely think that that is very much like needed. That is what this country is about.
Yeah.
But people also need to be able to have discussions from, you know, a less emotional place. You know, people, when you're voting, you're not voting for, you know, somebody you're inviting to dinner. I use that analogy a lot. You know, you need to understand that you are voting for somebody who, you know, it's not, you're not voting for your new best friend. You're voting for somebody who is, their job is to uphold the policies that you support. And that's really what this is about. It's about policy.
Yeah.
And so I wish more people, when they have, absolutely, people should be able to agree to disagree. That is the flavor of life. And in general, I mean, you know, not just in politics. I think that's what makes life interesting, is that people have such varied perspectives. People have such diversity of thought. I'm always going to be a proponent of promulgating diversity of thought. You know, you hear so much from the social justice warriors about, you know, diversity, and then you realize what they really want is something that looks like a diverse color palette, and they want everybody to think the same. And I personally, like, sure, it'd be nice if we get diversity of appearance, but I care way more about diversity of thought before anything. And that to me is what really propels evolution and growth.
Right.
And so it's really important that people can be respectful, but I think it's also really important that people have, you know, discourse. It's not just this, you know, like, my guy's great, your guy sucks, and you vote for your guy like you're a shitty human being. Forgive my language, but like, I feel like that's basically what I'm hearing. You know, why not have a discussion about, why do you like your guy? What has he done? What is his list of accomplishments? And why is it that you think that it's going to be the best for the future of this country? And when you ask, where are we headed if we can't agree to disagree, that's that I wanted to address. That I lost my train of thought.
One thing I wanted to share actually on that note, when you said, why not have a discussion? Why not two people have that discussion? They're on both different sides of the aisle. Because I think people are afraid of persuasion. They're afraid of being persuaded otherwise.
That is exactly what I was going to. So that was what I wanted to address. Thank you. So when you said something about this guy made you question yourself.
Yep.
And you said it in a pejorative way. And my thought was, that's beautiful. I love, you know, I think everybody listening can tell I'm very strong in I have very, you know, I have, you know, strong convictions, and I stand by them. And I think people should. I'm not one of those people who says that we shouldn't be biased. I think we should be aware of our bias and then make conscious, you know, choices if that's where we want to lie. We want our bias to fit. However, I love the opportunity when somebody truly makes me question something. Not when they come and attack me, not when it's all, you know, ad hominems and emotionally charged accusations, but when somebody actually makes me think and question my perspective and my, you know, position, that is a gift to me, because then I have an opportunity. I mean, personally, I'm just a junkie for that kind of stuff. I love to think about things and question things and explore, you know, go on an intellectual journey. But I think it is a gift for all people, because we can't see our blind spots. And if somebody can make us think, not push us, not force us, but truly make us think, that is actually what that's what freedom of thought does. It allows for critical thinking, and critical thinking is the most essential component of any kind of progress. So yeah.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. And this is, so for those that are actually just tuning in for the first time, we are streaming everywhere. This is the RAS project. And this is, I believe, the third episode since you, Courtenay, have joined on. And one thing that I wanted to touch upon that, first of all, I mentioned that obviously one of the reasons why you're also on the show as a co-host is because I found beauty in the fact that you know how to agree to disagree and how respectful you are of people's views on things. And I was actually watching a video this weekend on Instagram. It might have been of Brad Lee, who I follow quite a bit because he's like a sales guru guy. And he was talking something about what changes his life. And he said it was like a 15-minute thing or something. And anyway, but the gist of the message was, he said, when I learned to uplift and support and respect other people, regardless of what I thought, I would just say, maybe I would message 5 people every morning and say, hey, how's it going? Crush it, man. It's Monday. Have an amazing day. It doesn't matter if they're a Democrat or a Republican or male or female or gay or straight or white or black. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because what you're doing is you're respecting that human being. And that right there is literally priceless. It goes above anything. It's just human to do. Yep. And so I think with politics, and we talked about it a little bit ago, and you being on the show too, is because you bring that perspective from the right. And I think a lot of people from the right specifically are like, why, they're just not in that kind of sense because, and I think there's also a lot of people on the left that just can't, learn to agree to disagree. And we need more of that, especially now, because I think I told you this before we started the show, but I saw a post this morning that was talking about, like a get ready turbulent week, like, oh, you're going to have to stock up on paper, fuel up your car. I can already see the lines at Sam's Club, I'm going to be stretching around, the block of people trying to fill up. And, of course, we know what happened 4 or 5 months ago, COVID, like, toilet paper and such. Luckily, we had enough supply. And let's face it, when you have 2 kids and a wife, like, I mean, yeah, you need, but even then, like going through that again, like in hindsight, it's kind of like I mean, that just seems ludicrous. Yeah. And why? It's sparked by, and this is where the controversy comes, I think, is that I think it's sparked by what's happening on the political side of things, on left and right. And some people are saying, well, I think the toilet paper and all of this, the shortage again this week being turbulent is intentional, right? Yeah. Like it's intentional to happen. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I think it's the scarcity mindset, honestly, from a lot of people. I think it's the scarcity mindset that I'm not going to be able to survive because let's face it, 4 months ago when we had the toilet paper shortage and the bleach shortage and like all the shortage, like all across America, like deep in my heart, I knew that we're going to make it. We're going to make it. Somehow we're going to make it. Was optimistic enough. And even though, like, I saw people post stuff on Facebook and like, oh my God, I'm trying to get toilet paper. I'm running out of toilet paper. I'm like, you do know there's alternatives, right? I think we've been like, born in the toilet paper mindset.
There wasn't a ton of it. Honestly, it was actually pretty hard to get in a lot of areas. So, yeah. And it was online was hard. Yeah. So it was, yeah.
So I think, I think this week there's a lot of scarcity again. I think a lot of people are going to fall in that scarcity mindset when we need more optimism than ever and more positivity now.
I absolutely think we need a lot more positivity, but it's interesting because people think of me as such an optimistic person. I hear this all the time. And I think, at heart I am, that's the core of who I am, sure. But I'm not a Pollyanna. I think part of why I'm optimistic is because I'm a realist. So I know that sounds a little ironic, but it is the truth. It's because I don't sugarcoat things. I don't live in a land of fairies and rainbows and unicorns. I'm very aware of where reality is. And because I understand the negatives, I'm able to prepare. I'm able to recognize, what hardships may be and what hardships there have been, and look forward. So I think that's, there's a big difference between going into a dire scarcity mindset and going into, okay, businesses have been boarded up. There is a lot of talk of unrest, and I don't want to be scrambling at the 11th hour, because that's horrifying. To be in a position where you truly can't protect yourself and your family. That's actually really horrifying. I would rather think,
right.
Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and know that, it's probably going to be okay. But just in case, I'm not going to be scrambling, and I can protect myself. And I will tell you that, I've heard from people that this unrest is coming from very organized, very highly financed places, and that they were planning for after the election, they're planning for after inauguration, and they went early with the George Floyd, because they had the means. They were so over, they had such surplus that they were able to, and use that as an excuse. So, hopefully we won't see that again. I'm really hoping that. And there's a place in my heart that thinks that even if we do, it may be shorter, because people are more prepared, so.
One thing I wanted to touch upon that you mentioned is the fact that you're a realist, and that's something that I resonate with very much. I think that's why I made the comment earlier about the post that was posted about the guidelines and the recommendations that the Michigan State Health Department had made, and how a lot of people were really just jumping into conclusions. But I understand. And I think that's where the realism comes into play, because, the realistic person in me is just that if I see an act of dictatorship being put into law, and maybe that's where the lack of education and political insight, comes into play, then of course I'm going to oppose it. And I think that's what people, misconstrue, is that, I am realistic. I don't live in a fictitious world, because I see things the way I see them, and interpret them the way I interpret them, and the way I see them best fit for my own interests, and the way it, affects my own life and my family's life. And that's what people, I think, sort of, overlook, is this, that realism. Because, and I personally think that you have to be realistic, especially now. Right now, with tomorrow being election day, you have to be more realistic than ever. And if you are skeptical about something, just hope for the best result. Can you take action against something? Do you need to vote? Have you voted? Go vote. If you think that's going to make a difference, go and vote. And that's what I think a lot of people are, being very speculative of, is just that, well, is my vote going to make, a difference? Well, if you don't vote, then obviously it's not going to make a difference, because it's not going to count. Or are you in disbelief of voting? Because let's face it, there's millions of people who are neutral, because they don't believe that either of the candidate, is going to solve the problems. But at the end of the day, is just be realistic. Just be realistic, be optimistic, be positive, and in fact, one thing I've been thinking about this week is this, that just be kind-hearted. Just this week, there's going to be a lot of people that are probably going to be in disappointment. Regardless of what candidate wins, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be in disappointment.
Absolutely.
And that's where that unrest that you mentioned in the beginning of the show, that I think will really come to reality, like all these businesses being boarded up that I've been hearing, like, New York and New Jersey, and even on the East Coast as well, that's like preparing for this. And I think largely it's the scarcity mindset. It's the fear that's happening, because I think that a lot of these businesses are attempting to control the things they can't. Because let's face it, this is literally no different in what's happening right now with election, which I agree is probably one of the most important elections in recent times. But you can't control the inevitable.
And right, you can't control the inevitable, but because we have enough intel that they are planning unrest, you that doesn't mean you need to make yourself a victim either. There's a huge difference between being this is why I'm talking about being a realist, because, and I really want to drive this home, because there's a big difference between being a scarcity mindset and living in this, paralyzed state of fear, and taking control of the things that we can control. No, we can't control the outcome of the election. The only thing we can control is our own vote. However, you can protect your property. And that is one of the fundamental tenets of the United States of America, is property rights. That is your property, and you have a right to protect it and defend it. And so if that means you want to board up for, election night because you feel like you have enough intel, it's not just coming out of thin air. We have some real intel, and it has been made public. So, if people are concerned about that, of course, we don't know. Maybe it'll turn out to be totally fine. And that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that there's absolutely no unrest, and, people behave like adults, and, if they're happy, they're happy. And if they're disappointed, they cope with that in whatever way they need to, that doesn't infringe on other people's rights and properties and lives. But that doesn't mean that, if you're worried about it, that you shouldn't take, it's just like if somebody's worried about getting sick and they want to bump up their vitamin C and their vitamin D, why not do that? Absolutely. That's being a realist. Yeah, we do have a virus out there. Do what you need to do to protect yourself and boost your immunity. And I think it's the same thing. And the other thing I really did want to touch on with you, is kind of the central theme of, like, where are we headed if we can't agree to disagree? I think the first and foremost thing that we really need to protect is the First Amendment. And that is what agreeing to disagree is about. It's about allowing other people to have their voice, even if it's different from yours, and to be, that happens by being respectful. And, I think it's okay to have a heated discussion. I was on the debate team. I am all for heated discussion. I'm a very passionate person, and I have no problems with people, being logically reasoned and passionate about what they think and what they have to say. But, the line is drawn when you're shutting somebody down, when you're using violence, and you're threatening people's lives and property. So.
Well, that was, I couldn't have said it any better. One thing that I wanted to touch upon is, small businesses and the scarcity mindset. It kind of goes back to insurance, right? The insurance is one of those things that damn if you do, damn if you don't. It's a catch-22 situation. So I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, okay, let's say that there's going to be all this unrest, hypothetically, and it probably will happen in some form or fashion, right? But the severity of it is what we don't know, right? The severity of that. So let's say, they tear down and loot your store as a small business, right? You have insurance. Well, hopefully you have insurance, right? But I think the delineation in that is people are so emotional about the fact that they have to rebuild. I lived through the Ferguson thing, and that was devastating for a lot of small businesses. Nearly billions of dollars of damage that went into that. But here's the thing:
it's not just property, though. Some people's lives have been,
exactly, some people's lives. But it really all goes back to the inevitable. If that happens, you have insurance. You can rebuild. Insurance going to pay you. The losses that you sustain, sure, nobody wants to sustain those losses. Nobody wants to go through that. And most people will try to protect it. I get it. I would do the same thing. But then, go ahead.
Sorry. I really want to address this because, one, insurance doesn't always cover everything. And not everybody has insurance. But, of course, I think, if you have a business, you should have insurance. That's my personal opinion. But it's targeted. You do what you need to do. But insurance is not, fail-safe. Like, it does not protect against everything. In some cases, it will not protect you, as much as you need or even at all. And moreover, just because you have insurance, and I absolutely understand you have to rebuild. In life, we have failures, we have losses. We need to understand you're not always going to be on the top. That's life. And you need to be prepared to rebuild. However, that does not, undermine or negate the, severity of devastation to people's lives. It is their livelihood. So if their business is destroyed, some people have no other way of putting food on the table than that business.
I agree.
And, while it would be great to say that people have a year's worth of saving, not everybody does. And not everybody's able to do that, So,
Right.
so these people depend on it. Their families depend on it. And their safety, their livelihood depends on it. So to say, oh, well, it doesn't really matter because insurance is going to cover it, that's just not accurate. And it's a huge mistake to make. And it's quite callous.
Yeah.
Honest.
No, I agree with you. There's a caveat to that, especially the insurance side. I mean, the insurance is supposed to help you. That's what it was meant to be. But I'm one of those people that will tell you that I've been through certain circumstances where I feel like I had to pry someone's teeth just to get compensated for damage. I've had it happen on one property. I've had it happen with a vehicle in the past, and it's just like, let's look at this. For 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, I've been accident free. And now when someone hits me, like, you're not going to pay me out for 3 months. And that was the case when I was younger. It takes time. And so I agree with you, is like, there's nothing out there that will, supplement what we have built, losing loved ones, even our friends, as a result of vandalism, or chaos. I absolutely get it. And that's not the point I was trying to make. I was just trying to say that there are certain things that are designed to help us cope. But at the end of the day, it's not going to replace, the business that we built and the memories and the experiences. It's not going to do that. And that's where I think it's so difficult for people, to see that, you can't control what you can't control. You can prepare as much as you can, and you can try to oppose it, and you can do that. And I see definitely value in that. Absolutely. When people try to protect the things that matter to them, because I do the same, I do the same. But also at the same time, it's like when the inevitable happens, it's like, how do I create comfort with that? Right. You can't, and that's what people struggle with, and it is challenging. It is, and I think that's what we're going to see a lot of this week. There's going to be a lot of unrest. There's going to be a lot of looting. There's going to be a lot of outrage. There's going to be a lot of hatred on social media. There's going to be a lot of violence, and I think whether Joe Biden or Donald Trump wins, honestly, there's going to be, honestly, and that's one of the reasons why I also wanted to talk about this topic and the election tomorrow and the direction that the America, that we all love is going towards, because 250 years of fighting and sacrificing, didn't go for anything. And that's, I think, the key message, I want to round out with, because I want people to be kind. I want people to be positive. I want them to be optimistic. Definitely defend the things that are important to you, but understand that we need to come from a place of love, and respect each other, because after all, this is the United States of America.
Absolutely.
So, and with that being said, that's really all that I have for the show today. Courtenay, thank you so much for joining me. I mean, this was a powerhouse of an hour. You shared so much amazing perspective that I know people will hopefully benefit from. I know there were a few people that I commented, on the stream also, as, we were chatting in live. And I was trying to see if, I can address some of them. There's a couple long comments. Definitely check those out. When you get a second. And before we wrap things up, I wanted to let you guys know that the RAS Project airs live on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, Twitch, LinkedIn Live, and YouTube, also every Monday and Friday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, with my amazing sidekick, Courtenay Turner, who always brings the fire. And that's all we have for you guys today for the show. Courtenay, again, thank you so much for all the insight. Definitely appreciate it.
Thank you. Awesome.
Have an amazing day, everyone. We'll talk to you later. Take care.